morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Sunday morning Roundtable. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent from Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. Today is Sunday, July 16th, 2017. And before we begin, I will have Carol read our prayer.
This is a lead prayer given at the Massachusetts Metaphysical College. O my God, I offer as a consecrated gift upon thine altar a heart dedicated to thy service, lips speaking only words of charity, love, and truth, thoughts striving to be only the true thoughts of the mind of God. Help me to endure unto the end, strong in the faith, powerful in the truth. All the influence that I can bring to bear, all the force of tongue or pen that is mine, I offer in thy service. May heaven help, consecrate, and accept.
And then from Miscellaneous Writings. We today in this classroom are enough to convert the world if we are of one mind. For then the whole world will feel the influence of this mind, as when the earth was without form, and mind spake, and form appeared. Our lesson topic, subject today is life. The golden text, Matthew 5. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works, and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Does anyone remember or could tell me anything about the watching point for this week, which is number 165? Certainly went along with our lesson. I hope you all read it and study it during the week. That's why we have it up there.
Don't drive your car with dirty windows.
Right. Well, thank you, Tom. You got something. That part.
You know what I found fascinating was the reference to Job 42, verse 10. So,
thank you. And what?
I know we had that in Bible study before. I mean the book of Job, but I didn't really know about this verse. So I read a little bit about it this morning. So it was really nice. Good verse.
And what is the verse?
Well, Job, was going through all these problems and suffering and everything, and then he prays for his friends, and then his life starts turning around. So it's about praying for other people.
Yes. It's one
and
little
not all
verse.
the problems that you have, so to speak,
Yes.
Oh, I pray my problems can be taken care of today, But when he turns his attention away from himself.
That's exactly right. When you turn your attention away from yourself, because whatever is troubling you is a mesmerism that wants you to focus on it. And when you do something unselfish like that, pray for your brother, then healing can transpire. I found it fascinating, too. It's Job 42:10. It's just one little verse in that whole big story. And it sort of captures that whole story. What really did it, what really brought about his healing. Now this week's lesson is similar to last week's lesson in the sense it's got those verses from James and the idea of what is the thought in James and elsewhere, as in the watching point. Well, you can just talk your way through life, can't you? You can just talk a good game, and that's all you ever have to do. Be good at memory, memorizing all the verses, and just talk, right? Is that what it's
Moody of naughtiness.
We need to demonstrate.
Yes, of course.
It calls us to do something.
do something.
Do something. Yes.
Usually those that do the most talking are the most obnoxious. I found that to be the case anyway.
Well, if it's not lived, Mrs. Eddy says it does what to you?
Rolls a stone on your heart?
It rolls a stone on your heart when it's not lived, when it's preached. Doing and the living of it is very, very important. Do you want to give your interpretation of that verse that she wrote about on the forum, Jeremy?
Certainly. Doing me a lot of good to look up words lately. You just want me to read the verse?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The interpretation.
Wherefore lay apart all defilement by sin and any abundance of wickedness, and allow yourselves to conform naturally and perfectly to the Word of God, and incorporate it in a permanent way.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you know, the amplified version of the Bible, one of the reasons I like it, a lot of it is just this, looking up the words, getting a different definition of the words, and shedding new light on it. So, very important that we do this. Now,
Mary, if I might say something. I was, this week's watching point meant so much because it brought back to me something that I heard spoken to me when I was struggling so much with seeing someone correctly. This was way back in 2006. And I heard clearly, I wrote it down, that no man and only know him as an idea of God, then you will be obeying the law of love one another. This reading the watching point this week really spoke to me. It's like, just don't say things or read and read and read, but do it. Do something.
thank you. That is obedience to God. And the watching point certainly brings out you can't claim you love God and not see your brother right, not see yourself right either. This is part of the consistent obedience to God. Harry's just going to read that verse from Job.
Job 42:10. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before.
Whatever holds human thought in line with unself love receives directly the divine power. Mary Baker Eddy, Science and Health. Now, this week, our friend Bob in Colorado, Carson, sent me something rather interesting. It's something called Accidie, spelled Accidie. And what it stands for is melancholy, boredom, really of the worst kind, futility, despair. And it looks like, from what he wrote, or what actually he didn't write this is just some things others have written about it, it's been a very long-standing human problem. It's considered one of the sins. In these articles, it speaks about monks long ago getting afflicted with it and just wanting to give up all their work for God. Now, I can sort of understand. But anyway, it's the idea that you just have a sense of total futility and worthlessness. Many books have been written on it. Many books that get great rave reviews have been written on it, too. So it's something that needs to be addressed. In one of these articles, it says it refers to, the 91st Psalm, the pestilence and the plague of the noonday comes during the day, where you feel just a sense of total hopelessness and despair. And it was interesting because what happened to you this week, Linda, with your son?
Well, he was actually in the car driving with me, and he started to tell me a research that he had been reading about boredom. And this particular individual was actually looking at prisoners who are in solitary specifically, but that is a very obvious affliction because they have nothing there to do or around them. And this researcher put himself in a position where he was isolated to see what it felt like so he could have more of a direct impact on his life. And he found that he could not do something. It was impossible. So it's like this drive to be busy or do something. But it really made me think because this inflicts everybody, and you can see it with the children nowadays with their gaming and drug use, and it's not just afflicting the children or afflicting adults. I've had it myself where this week I felt that. It was in the middle of the day. My son was playing video games, and I could just feel this sense coming in. And I immediately got this idea. I was praying to be active. And so I got some ideas, and I included my son, and we got busy, and it broke. But what I learned from it, too, is that it really has to be done with God, because otherwise you're going to try to fill it with anything, golfing, reading, eating. I mean, if you think about it, the more you think about it, you realize a lot of what everybody's doing, even like on Wall Street, this drive to accomplish and get all this money, it's all really, to me, behind this sense of needing a purpose, but not doing it through God. And so I thought this was really profound that this topic came up. And it's self-injurious if you don't do it, if you don't address it.
Thank you very much. It is a worldwide plague, really, and you see it, as Linda said, in all the gaming, all this, it's pretty much mindless activity, shopping, where people are looking to do something, trying to fill a void. And of course, we know here the only way you can fill it is in God, and finding your purpose and your place in God.
Can I add one more quick thing, too, because it was an insight for me. I read up a little bit on it, and another thing about this boredom and this feeling is sometimes it's an avoidance of hard work or something you don't like to do or something you've gotten tired of or feelings. And so now when I start feeling this, I stop and pay attention to what's going on around me. And I've noticed sometimes a lot of it has to do with feelings you're trying to avoid, too, which has been mentioned here. But
absolutely.
Trying to avoid something. It could be a lot of stuff you're trying to avoid.
Escapism.
And it's even true with kids in school that maybe are having trouble learning. They want to escape. They think it's boring. But it's not really boredom. It's just, to me, boredom's the wrong term. It's really the devil that we're talking about and the demons we're trying to cast out. It's animal magnetism. It's what Mrs. Eddy was constantly harping on all her people, because people are trying to get human harmony. And
thank you.
So that was just really huge.
It is. It's a very, very good explanation.
I like that word accident because it seems like it's also the base of accident.
Oh,
wow.
Interesting.
And we have learned here accidents don't just happen. It's a letting down, turning away in some way. You're not being alert. You're not being aware. So falling away first. And if you are entertaining these thoughts of despair and boredom and depression, you're more liable to those sort of things. That's why it is a tool of the devil, if you want to call it a devil, animal magnetism. It's the absence of what? God generally, but what specifically?
Divine activity.
Thank you.
God is all acting.
What did you write about on the forum? Proverbs.
Oh, yes, the recipe for life. There's a reason why we're living. There's a reason why we even are here. It's not just to occupy space and sit down for dinner every night and whatever. But this, with Proverbs, it says, in the way of righteousness is life. There's a divine purpose for each and every one of us. It is true. And in that way, in fulfilling this divine purpose, There's no death.
Thank you very much.
And there's no despair, no boredom, no accident,
Futility.
no futility. This malady that Mary's talking about and that Linda was talking about, to me, is really just the result of avoiding your divine purpose. And, for whatever reason, people avoid their divine purpose. They've got misconceptions of God that, that screw them up, that, make them feel like there isn't one or isn't one that they want to respect or pay attention to. Or they just or they're selfish and they don't want to, they don't want to live a selfless life yet, or something that keeps them from finding their divine purpose. The devil is trying all of us to get us to do something other than our divine purpose.
It definitely comes down to that divine activity and divine purpose, because listening to this, it came to me in a totally different way. I had spent so many years absolutely working from dawn to dusk, and when our daughter was born, it became my job to take care of her, and I just felt terrible the whole time because I wasn't earning money, and it was a very difficult thing to overcome because I was doing something that needed to be done, but since I wasn't being paid in dollars and cents, there was this sense that had been ingrained into me by society and such. So it's activity, but for the wrong reasons, motives, and etc. to not overcome the lack of divine activity.
Thank you, Mike. The lesson, citation 3, in Science and Health. Jeffrey, you want to read it?
Sure.
Speak up, please.
The scientific unity which exists between God and man must be wrought out in life practice, and God's will must be universally done. For this glorious result, Christian Science lights the torch of spiritual understanding.
Thank you. Now, does she say the scientific unity which exists between God and man? Perhaps should be brought out in life practice.
So it's one of them must.
Nice thing, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it be nice?
You had a moment or two.
Yeah, if you have a moment or two. If you have a moment or two to do this. Did she say that? No.
No, it's one of her must statements.
Yes. Must. Therefore, if you don't, you will fall under laxity. I think the French, and if Suzanne here, I'll probably know. Suzanne, how do you say? Ennui or something?
Ennui.
Ennui.
Yeah, that's right, ennui.
And French have a lot to say about it, don't they? There are a lot of.
Well, they developed this existentialism, which is so negative, that there is no God. This whole wave of existentialism, I couldn't stand it, reading about it, because God's just left out of the picture.
Thank you. I think there's a lot in Russian literature, too, about it. Probably all cultures have it, but... So how do you find your divine purpose? Does it just come flying at you as a...
Well, simply we can ask God.
Thank you very much. A very good starting point, Laura. Thank you. You can want it and ask God for it. people go barreling through life without even thinking about it, right?
It appears that way, anyway.
Usually there's something in you that will direct you if you listen, right? Talked about your spiritual sense. You will have certain talents and things that you just feel inspired to use. And so it is, and you see it in children. And children are just so naturally that way. Do you ever see a little child bored? No.
If it ever tries, they fight back. They refuse to be bored.
That's right. Who will play with me?
Yes, right.
Or something.
Come play with me.
That's it. Let's have some fun here.
You will play with me.
Yeah. So that is why we have to become as a little child. But they also have instincts about what they like to do and do it naturally. And if you develop those instincts, that's all God working, using them. But then ultimately, what must the talents be used for, whatever those talents are?
Serve God.
Yes.
Glorify God.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a preparation of the heart, isn't there? There's got to be a selflessness. There's got to be a humility, love for others.
So it's never, look at me, what I've done or what I can do.
It never is. Or look how much money I can make. Or some other selfish, self-centered goal. Now,
And that's what James says, show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works.
yes. Now that the desire to be able to take care of your family, to afford the necessities of life, is certainly an unselfish desire, and God blesses that. But just to make money for making money's sake, no. So listen to your inner voice. If you feel you haven't found your divine purpose, you can start today with doing watching. That's a divine purpose.
Another thing that's helped me many times when I felt like, yeah, I got to be doing something, but what? And a practitioner actually helped me with this. He says, well, sit quietly and then give it your best shot. Don't just sit there thinking about it all day long. Give it your best shot. But while you're doing it, keep your eyes and ears open, that listening antenna tuned in, because you may need to change direction. That doesn't mean that the first effort was wrong. It was the right step to get started. Give it your best shot, but then listen while you're doing it.
Be flexible.
Be flexible about it.
This is where humility comes in, too.
Absolutely.
For me. That, I used to tell the people who said they were bored, I said, it's self-inflicted. It doesn't, no, we're not doing it. But here I've learned that humility helps me to do the right thing, not just something like
Exactly.
Exactly.
What you want to do.
Exactly.
What God would have you do. And do you think a good God would not give you anything to do? No, Shardy, I got nothing for you to do today. You just sit in the corner and be miserable.
Not likely. Not for Shardy. She's got too much good to offer.
You see, there is so much to do. So if you ever get the thought that you don't have anything to do or anything to offer, who is saying that? The devil. That's it. You listen, you will get, and you will.
I think this is why the thought that day is the unfoldment of God's plan, that has been very helpful for me.
Thank you very much. That's why we do our studying and praying in the morning. Get your connection with the Father. Know that you're at one with Him. I and my Father are one. Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the work, and the Father hath not left me alone. Christ Jesus. That's why we do it, to live it, not just to think about it. Now, in his forum comments, Bob wrote from Christian Healing what Mrs. Eddy says, which is a very, very important. It's one Mrs. Evans gave us, and we were asked to work with Bruce.
God is all and in all. That finishes the question of a good and a bad side to existence. Truth is the real, error is the unreal. You will gather the importance of this saying when sorrow seems to come, if you will look on the bright side. For sorrow endureth but for the night, and joy cometh with the light. Then will your sorrow be a dream, and your waking the reality, even the triumph of soul over sense. If you wish to be happy, argue with yourself on the side of happiness. Take the side you wish to carry, and be careful not to talk on both sides or to argue stronger for sorrow than for joy. You are the attorney for the case, and you will win or lose according to your plea.
Thank you. I was once afflicted with depression, and I will say it is not something you just wake up one morning and say, gee, I'm depressed. It takes a while of a lot of negative thinking that you're entertained. So you've got to work at it, just as this statement from Mrs. Eddy says. You have to argue on the right side. And if you are one who is prone to be depressed, then you better get going. Start arguing on the right side, arguing for the happiness that you deserve, the joy that comes when you are in obedience to Him. Heard Gary's testimony. It's something, again, we learned here that when he would be feeling depressed, you think about maybe something you can do to bless someone else. What is the opposite of depression? What is the word that's the opposite of depression?
Expression.
And you know, in Ways That Are Vain, she talks about it as well. What happens in Mrs. Eddy's article, Ways That Are Vain? She tells you a process that comes over you. You don't fight it. You become feeling paralyzed and inactive. This magnetic voice makes you feel like you don't want to do anything, that you just, can't. And then everything that's good seems bad, and everything that's bad might seem good. And so you don't want to do anything for anybody else. You don't want to be, she says, you don't want to be with God's people. Ways That Are Vain. It's a very important article. That's what this mesmeric voice does to you. The form of hypnotism. You become almost, you do. You become what seems to be paralyzed in it. That's when you kick and scream and recognize it and fight back and do something. That's what Bruce was saying. Even if it's not even if it's something wrong, get out and do something. Don't just sit there and take it. Fight back. And you will get out of it, because it's not your natural state. It's not your natural state. So, any comments or questions on this? Everyone here and everyone listening and everyone who listens later during the week should have this deep sense of your life purpose. Certainly, once you find science, you should be on fire with it. How we can spread the word and help others with it. The last sentence in Pond and Purpose by Mrs. Eddy is this: drink with me the living waters of the spirit of my life purpose, to impress humanity with a genuine recognition of practical, operative Christian science. Any of you think you don't have a life purpose? Page 207, Miscellaneous Writing. Try it, you'll like it. It'll bring great joy to your life. Okay, so anyone on the Bible before we continue to go on to science and health?
I think one comment on the ways that are vain. Someone shared with me how to personalize it, and it's been very helpful. For example, you could say, my mind cannot be made dormant by it, which is referring to animal magnetism, and I cannot be found in a state of semi-individuality. I think personalizing it has been very helpful.
Thank you. Yes. Lawrence has a wonderful article to that effect. Maybe if anyone wants it, they can contact you. Actually, I would like another copy of it, Lawrence.
Okay.
I put mine away, but it's wonderful. You apply it directly to yourself. Something to work with often, because it is how the workings of animal magnetism. And then what this article that Carson sent me, it says, then you suddenly you don't want to do the work you're doing. You know, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like it. I want to be somewhere else.
You don't like the people around you all of a sudden.
You don't like the people around you.
Start blaming them.
Yes. And your discontent, your malcontent just spreads. And you certainly see it. This is what ruins families. They can have a happy family, children, marriage. Suddenly, oh, I don't like this guy anymore. I want to have an affair. You know, I'm tired of my children. I mean, I've seen it. I hear stories of it today. Mrs. Eddy, and I believe it's the first edition of Science and Health, asked that question. What would make a man or a woman suddenly just leave their family? What would do that?
The gradual enticement of false, whatever it calls itself.
Yes. Now,
I would say a lack of gratitude.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Not realizing you have an incredibly blessed life and it just could hardly be better. And then wanting to go and find yourself. I mean, I knew a family that was a beautiful family, and the wife wanted to go off to a retreat and find herself. And it was just an act. She didn't realize just how amazing her life was and how God had blessed them in so many ways. And then they ended up divorcing, and she just broke everyone's heart because she needed to go and be selfish. But just a lack of gratitude, I think, would send you off the deep end. You don't realize how blessed you are.
Absolutely the right answer. Yes, it is. Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you the exact same story someone my daughter knew. And it was the same story. The woman had to go find herself. And they had seemed to be a happy marriage, too. Adorable little girls. She takes off to find herself. And divorce and ennui. Did I say that right? No. Accident. Anyway, these words. Futileness. But Mrs. Eddy asked that question, and you see it all around. You see it now. It's not just happened long ago. It happens today. What in the world's come over these people? Animal magnetism, lack of gratitude, putting them to sleep, lack of purpose.
I think that's really it. You're susceptible to it if you don't have a sense of your life purpose, of your divine purpose. I mean, if you don't have something to get up and do for, for mankind, for God every day, what are you going to let in to your thoughts?
If you don't have that, then you're lacking that contentment that keeps you from fighting or resisting those extending steps of evil that drops in silent arguments and all the other wrong thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're a sitting duck for it. And that you do see is a sad thing, because you see these people who seem to have everything, but they are living very selfish lives. All they care about is themselves. Maybe it's a possessive sense of their wife or husband or children or whoever. And that's not healthy. They have no greater cause other than to make their own lives comfortable. That might go an inch. Maybe I'll give you an inch. That's about as far as it'll go, an inch. And then it just...
But it eventually has to be replaced by a higher purpose.
Yes.
Actually, I wonder if it almost takes you backwards, because I feel like I'm having to make resets from that place where I was.
Oh, yeah. It will take you. Well, especially if you made progress and then you get into that, then it will draw you back, yes. Is that what you mean?
Well, no, that too. I was thinking more in terms of if you live a selfish life, you have a lot of work to undo all that unselfishness in some sense. I don't know how to explain it, but it seems like I've dug a big pit and I'm having to go in.
Like you went the wrong way in
Yes,
the maze?
yes, that's a better way of putting it. The wrong way in the maze, so now you got to go back.
But remember, too, it's an awakening process. Okay. So, and many, sometimes it does take a while, sometimes it doesn't, but just keep at it with joy.
Yeah. But you're right. You got to peel back the layers of the onion that have been built up over the years.
And go ahead, Florence.
No.
I was just going to say something quickly. This is Amanda. I've noticed lately that a comment I've heard so many times, I feel just in the past week alone, is I have nothing to show for myself. Excuse me. Meaning that it's someone who feels that their life has been wasted, so to speak, in other pursuits, so they don't have the bank account they want at a phase in their life, or the car, or their profession. And I used to feel that exact same way, but now it seems those things are also fleeting. They're not permanent. It is building your house, your dreams, everything in the sand. But it goes exactly to what we're talking about. If you are not pursuing your purpose, you are susceptible to feeling that until you make the transition in thought that those are not the things we're to be pursuing, at least not for that motive.
Very good point, and I've heard that too. Nothing to show for myself. All these years, and I have nothing to show for myself. Now, if you think it's in your highfalutin job in your car and you don't have that, well, then you're looking in the wrong place.
But Mrs. Evans used to describe it as, when you work for God, when you do something, useful for mankind, you have money in the bank of God. You have your reserves in heaven.
And when needed, you could draw on it. But animal magnetism would make you think, if you've led the best life you know how, and just because, Era tells you something that, well, you have nothing to show for it, well, who is saying that? This is where you have to be wise. A lot of people have done a tremendous amount of good that you will never see their name in the newspaper, okay? And maybe they could say, I have nothing to show for it. That's simply not true.
I think the responsive reading addresses that perfectly. Every single citation. Lay not for yourself treasures upon earth, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, seek ye first the kingdom of God. I mean, that just addresses it all right there.
Thank you. Very true. Yes, it is. So.
But it's also applicable to our healing that we've processed. I mean, if you haven't seen the actual physical change, that doesn't mean you have nothing to show for it. What about the gradual, understanding that you're gaining? The same evil argues the same way. You have nothing to show for it. You see, you're still not well or whatever. But what about all the gaining that's going on?
Very important.
It's not everything you see out there that you have. It's what you feel inside.
That's exactly right. It's not. You can't gauge it by what you see with the physical senses. And if you've been working in your science, whether you see the physical results yet or not, doesn't matter. You are gaining. And sooner or later you will see the physical results. That's what it means, as in heaven, so on earth. It's right that you do. But if you haven't yet, that's... And why? Why is that so? Why is that so?
More to learn.
Yes, most definitely more to learn. But
working for God is not in vain, even though you may not see what the so-called physical result, like someone said, you feel it. And, that is so encouraging because being almost a lifelong Christian Scientist from the age of 3, a lot of that that would come to me is if you don't handle this and aren't healed, then you're not successful. And that's still not true because what you're saying is encouraging and it gives hope. And I hope people understand that because that's something I've struggled with.
There's something else here. These things do have results. And if people complain about not having them, it's because they didn't come in the form that they wanted. There's a fixed rule of the universe. It's given on page 304. Divine love cannot be deprived of its manifestation or object. Cannot be deprived of it. So the results do come. And we do have them. But it's for the divine purpose, not to satisfy our selfish expectations.
Thank you.
Reminds me a little bit of that Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, with Jimmy Stewart, where he was kind of way down there and had to be shown what life would have been without all the good he had done throughout it.
Thank you. I've never seen that, but I've heard it good. Yeah. So many have done so much good, and yet they discount themselves, and that is always, you have to ask yourself when you get thoughts, who is saying that? Is God telling you that you're nothing, you're worthless? All you've ever done is useless or worthless? Now, if all you've ever done is useless and worthless, well, that's something else. And then you better listen. Listen up. And that can be true. I mean, some people lead horrible lives. Paul the apostle did. But he listened up and he changed. So, remember that Mrs. Eddy says in the lesson, we must realize the ability of mental might to offset human misconceptions and to replace them with a life which is spiritual, not material. So, this is what you keep arguing for. Your life is God. He created you. He created you for a purpose. And that purpose is in you, and it will unfold when you listen and when you don't listen, when you listen to God and you don't listen to all these erroneous suggestions that would keep you off straight and narrow path. And once you do, it's very joyous. There's always good to be done. And as I said, even if you were to spend the whole day praying and working and watching for the world, you will be doing much. And what keeps you on the path is your love for your brother and for God. When you start growing in science, you get a greater, more divine sense of love. It becomes less selfish, and you want to bless others. And that keeps you on that path. And you make that covenant with God, covenant that you will fulfill your purpose. And I love, and this is in the preface of Science and Health, to preserve a long course of years, still and uniform, amid the uniform darkness of storm and cloud and tempest, requires strength from above, deep draughts from the fount of divine love. You keep on this path, you keep on your purpose by turning constantly to your Father, holding steadfastly, perpetually to Him, and knowing it is Him, He, her, that is doing it. All right, we are going to go on now to The Woman and the Dragon, the article, What Prospers Healing, by David Keaston. This one is quite interesting, this part.
The Woman and the Dragon. Mrs. Eddy foresaw the resistance her own church would employ in obscuring her teachings and who she is, her spiritual identity known to God and to the faithful remnant. In an article penned in her own handwriting, found in her scrapbook, Mary Baker Eddy unfolded a chilling prophecy of the future as regards her church in an article entitled Catholicism, Protestantism, Christian Science. The first holds barbarous pictures of cruelty in mind and carries out its ideal. Instead of liberality and universality, it is absolute despotism. It would cause Jesus Christ to abdicate for the Pope and his reverence to have full power to sin and libidum and teach others to do so. Protestantism is susceptible of breaking each of the 10 Commandments and teaching others so to do, and then by appeal to the Catholic's deposed sovereign to obtain pardon and be welcomed into heaven through the religious law of chancery. Insolvent, unable to be a good man himself, he expects God to justify him because God is good and pays the debts of sin, so that the sinner can pass on without punishment. Christian Science is susceptible of being made the repository for all the sins of the other two religions in marked face and form, whereby the most aggravated and exaggerated and liberated powers of evil have full sway. Each religion, defined by what the words include, is right, but fatally wrong and wronged in its interpretation by the world, the flesh, and the devil, the three-in-one of error, opposed to the trinity of life, truth, and love. The woman has cast into these three measures of iniquity the leaven that is fermenting them. Therefore, they, inherent in mortal mind, take vengeance on their destroyer. Alas for the masquerade of their friendship, of their gratitude, of their honesty, of their virtue, and especially of their humanity towards this woman. Does one human heart love her? No. It is all a farce. The carnal mind hates her and deserts her, lies about her, steals from her, mocks her, betrays her, nails her to the cross and spits on her, saying, "Come down from the cross." Then parts her seamless robe that has not one ridge of the three religions as interpreted by this trio of error, and casts lots for it. Rending it into rags, it picks up the shorn glory and decks itself therewith in harlequin jacket. Not one of these three religions misused is the rock on which Christ's truth builds the church, against which the gates of hell cannot prevail. And the last one is named the final one, Therefore, it holds the most relentless war against the woman. An example of what Mary Baker Eddy warned us of in the above would be the videotape produced by the church on her life. This video is a travesty, filled with images of death and the most subtle and subliminal aspirations on our leader's pure character, humanizing her life and accomplishments. Much has been done in the church's widely promoted 3-volume biography. The only saving grace is that this video is no longer promoted in the reading rooms. To offer another subtly derogatory video, as in The Soul of a Woman, recently promoted in the 20th Century Biographers series, is nearly as bad. One wonders when this attack on Mrs. Eddy will cease. For an example of a well-done video effort, don't fail to see the production by Longyear Museum titled Mary Baker Eddy, The Concord Years.
So those are very sobering words. What she's saying is it's going to be the church she founded. That's the one that really turns on her. And we have seen it. We have seen it. And this is why we stand, why we discuss these things and we press on and not be dismayed by it. But as we each find our life's purpose in working for God, the leaven of truth will continue to work and will overturn, because this pure science is of God, and therefore nothing can ever stop or stay its hand of God. So we will proceed to a wonderful, strong service in the strength of the Lord. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.